grouping. What's most disturbing in the budget is that of the 300 or 275 to 300 pages, there is no expenditure in the budget dedicated to strawberry. Yet, when we look at the census and we look at the funds generated, tax revenues both from real estate and sales taxes, when you look at the diversity of our community, we're at a loss where the millions of dollars from strawberry are going. And so when you talk about monies to strawberry, some 500 yards up the hill here is a road that's been in disrepair and collapsed. For well over a year and a half, as well as roads aren't paved, trash isn't picked up, and quality of services are deficient. So when you sit here and tell us about a $175,000 research study about the Tiburon Y and how this is so important for us to participate in PDA and all of these other programs, we're a bit skeptical.
Just to be clear, I'm concerned that your position is that we are already in it and sort of it's over and so there's no rush, which scares me a lot. And the other is, I didn't hear actually what would make you take us out, other than some more talking.
Let's let the supervisor answer that.
Well, back on the point that was just made, I have a lot of county staff here, but unfortunately I don't have the director of our Department of Finance who could really give you the deep dive about what it means to do the tax collection of unincorporated Marin. So that's a question that may need to be answered later once we can get more, real financial data for you. But if you were an incorporated area, it would be a different financial situation. You're not. And so the county handles its finances and its budgeting for the county in a particular way, and we'll get you the details on that. Back on where we all started, though, about the concern that somehow the PDA here and the $175,000 is benefiting communities outside of Strawberry. That's actually a benefit in terms of eligibility for future financing because of the significance of that intersection and the number of communities that are affected by traffic and by that interchange. So it actually enhances the ability, hopefully, of projects in that area to get funding. But David, I don't know, you're not, finances are really your issue, so I think we're going to, right, I'll spare you. We'll get our Department of Finance to give you the real details on
I think the community would love to see him.
Yeah, maybe you need a second meeting. All right, let's go on to the next one at this meeting. Next question.
Wait. Other question.
What would it take?
Oh, okay. Well, that's fair. They got to ask the question. The question is, I think they're asking again, and let me just repeat it because it was written down. It's always easier. What would it take for you to support Strawberry opting out of any designation for prioritized development? That's the question. That's it.
I think, as I said before, it's going to take more conversations about the housing and the PDA, because as I said before, these are complicated issues, and they deserve some time.
You got your answer? Like it or not, you got your answer. Isn't it true that Strawberry could be removed as a designated priority development area and still receive, I don't need to quote you, but you're aware, I'm aware, still receive transportation funding?
Yeah. It's possible. As I said before, the mandate for ABAG, One Bay Area grant monies, federal transportation dollars, is that 50% of those monies go to a PDA. If you're not in a PDA, that means you're competing with other areas that are not in the PDA for 50% of the funding. So there might be some funds available there, but boy, is that a competitive world that you would be in.
Anybody?
No, I want to make a point on transportation funding. First of all, a lot of the funding that we get for transportation comes from the federal government and flows through the Association of Bay Area Governments and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. In fact, the only funding that is available in theory for PDAs is 13% of transportation funding. And that 13% has to get split between, right now, 3 PDAs. It is a de minimis amount of money, and I would argue, I can't substantiate it, but I would argue that public policy suggests that even if we were removed from a PDA, politicians at the local and the state level would be induced to give us funding for the Tiburon Y because it's an embarrassment to everybody right up to Jerry Brown.
And I think we're going to go back to... I mean, I think the issue that is whether this is voluntary or not, and ABAG, the executive director of ABAG, wrote to one of our supervisors just last month and said, the county board of supervisors can at any time modify or eliminate all or part of the potential Highway 101 PDA. We have stated from the outside, Plan Bay area is locally driven. When it comes to designating these PDAs, it is voluntary. There is no, Tam Almonte, Marinwood, they just recently were out. For the last couple of years that this has been going on, each city in Marin County has looked at this issue. Are we going to opt into a priority development area or not? And there are none in except for one small PDA in San Rafael. Why, if everyone else in Marin County, cities in other county areas are opting out, why should it be forced here when we're saying we don't want it?
Yeah. Supervisor Sears, your thoughts?
Thank you. There's actually 2 significant PDAs in the city of San Rafael. One of them is the Civic Center area PDA, which is in the city of San Rafael, and the other is the PDA that's by what will be the Smart Train terminus in downtown San Rafael. The Transportation Authority of Marin has allocated $800,000 to the San Rafael PDA. If there would be a decision by San Rafael, I think that's targeted entirely at the Civic Center PDA. Should San Rafael decide to remove that area from the PDA, those funds would need to be reallocated. So there's a potential for money moving around. I'll just stop there because
You know, just as a point of clarity, just as a point of clarity, we were informed just recently that even though Tam Valley opted out for the PDA and just received $475,000 in transportation funding.
Thank you. You reminded me. So I wanted to address Tam Valley and why I supported taking Tam Valley out of the PDA. There were many people in that neighborhood who did not like the idea of being in a PDA. There are people there who really scared their neighbors about the ramifications of being in a PDA. But the reason I supported taking Tam Valley out of the PDA was I made a policy statement. Just as I think the Plan Bay area makes a policy statement, I made a policy statement. And that statement was, Tam Valley, the PDA in Tam Valley is a floodplain and it's subject to sea level rise. And it's not...
You know, Strawberry is
It's not a good planning decision, in my perspective, to even think about encouraging, even though we're not building housing, that is not an appropriate place to build housing in an area that already floods and is subject to sea level rise.
Thank you. We're going to, very soon, we're going to have the questions brought by somebody up to me from the audience. Just look out here. Who's in charge of bringing the questions up? Whoever they are, please bring them up. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry, Dick. And I do want to address the $475,000. There was an article in the newspaper about an award of $475,000 to Strawberry. My understanding from Diane Steinhauser, who's the Executive Director of the Transportation Authority of Marin, is that was money that was granted to Caltrans to address flooding issues on Highway 101. And in her experience, those kinds of grants, at least at present, you have to stand in line for 3 or 4 years to get that money. That grant had absolutely nothing to do with whether Tam Valley was a PDA or not a PDA. And it's going towards repairing some of the culverts along Highway 101.
comments over here? Any questions? Anybody?
I think we're good. Do we have one more
Question to you, we're in trouble with the time-wise. We're at, okay, we're at 8:15. All right, let's do a kind of a lightning question. We have the last couple of this, we'll do that. Strawberry Community Plan approved by the Board of Supervisors. Plans for increase in single-family homes to create balance between single and multi-unit housing. You've got these before, so you've seen them, yes? Questions? I will read it again. The Strawberry Community Plan approved by the Board of Supervisors. Plans for an increase in single-family homes to create balance between existing single and multi-unit housing. A priority unit development area designation would do exactly the opposite. Why are you seeking to undermine an established and successful community plan that already provides for mixed-use, diverse housing that maintains the character of the community? I think I read it right.
Thank you, and I'm going to ask Tom Lai to address this.
The Strawberry Community Plan was adopted by the board in the early 70s. It was last amended in 82. The plan basically sets forth the densities and the types of land uses that we carry on to this present day through our countywide plan and through our zoning ordinance. And nothing's being proposed that would change that. The goal of the community plan, one of the goals, is to emphasize Strawberry as a family-oriented community to promote housing that serves family. And certainly one way to do that would be through the encouragement to build single-family detached homes. However, the community plan, even though it's a little bit outdated, also acknowledged the rising prices and the need to address affordable housing. So it too acknowledged that housing for folks in a range of incomes is also something that's worthy of pursuing. So to this day, we carry forward the same densities and land use types that were envisioned in this 73 and then the 1982 amendments to the community plan.
Well, it just sounds like that what you're saying is that if we're a PDA, our community plan doesn't govern us. And that's what it sounds like. And so, I mean...
one of our primary objections.
Any development, any multiple family development that's proposed, can't fit within the existing zoning on specific sites in the community. No sites are being planned to be rezoned. So, currently. Anything can happen in the future.
All right, anything else, folks? I'm going to go to the questions from the audience. First of all, first of all, great. I'm going to just explain. I've got a lot of questions from the audience. We've got about 40 minutes to answer these, so just understand. So we'd ask everybody to respect that time frame. We got like 21 questions here. It's impossible to do them all, so we try to rationalize them. Right now, they came as they are, so I didn't write them. Question. Why do we have to hear about PDAs for Strawberry via the Marin Independent Journal and not you? Why was it necessary to have signs in our lawns and an uproar to get you to include us in the process? Why don't you have the removal of PDAs for Strawberry on the Board of Supervisors agenda? What has to happen to make that occur? Well, I think what they're saying is, why do they have to hear about this in the Independent Journal? It's a good place to hear about it, but I think they
Right, yeah, that does raise a question. So why you had to hear about this meeting in the Independent Journal?
No, I think they feel
Oh. So, the planned area has been going on for a number of years, and the outreach has been conducted by ABAG and MTC. And to the IJ's credit, as much as I hate to do this, the IJ and a lot of other media have extensively covered the public meetings that dealt with Plan Bay area that have happened throughout the county. So, to those of you who only became aware of this PDA issue, I think that's very unfortunate. There's been a lot of press on the issue. For those of you, and I hope there are many of you here in the audience who are signed up for my electronic newsletters, we send out information on those kinds of meetings, on any housing issue. We have a website, on our county website. We always like to think people visit our county website, and don't disabuse me of that, please. But that county website really is a resource. Our planners have a whole section of the website that has information on all of these planning issues. There's a lot of resources, but it takes initiative to sign up for my newsletter and to pay attention to some of these issues. So I think it's important, very unfortunate that some people felt blindsided. And one of the things that I feel strongly about is making sure that my communications with this community are better in the future, because I've heard many of you say, why didn't we know? And we need to improve that and figure out ways that ensure that we are in touch in all of these issues.
I want to talk about the initiative as far as finding out what's going on. I can tell you how much of my time and the time of these people we have said taking initiative to find out what's really going on. Clan Bay area passed last month. Marinwood and Tam Valley were removed from the PDA last month. These are things that, as our representative, you should be coming into us immediately to say, what does this mean? This is now governing. You are a PDA. What does this mean for you? When we talk about how long we've been a PDA, I've gone back through these documents since 2007. It was a very different animal back then. It is not what it is now. And what's happening now is what we need to hear. Where is our representation? Because the cities in Marin County that are incorporated, they have people that are coming to tell us. I don't think the citizens of residents of Mill Valley are saying, that the county councilmen aren't covering this and we just aren't paying attention. But if we're unincorporated and we are represented by county officials, namely you, it is your responsibility to come and say, hey, this is coming down the pipe. Maybe you don't have 100 hours to take out of your life to go through all the documents and see how this is going to work out for you and what this really means. We need answers. That should have been proactive, and we should have a lot more detail, and it should have been, frankly, easier to get this meeting happening.
Not to be petty, but we will be petty for a second.
No, don't be petty.
Because, after hundreds of hours of volunteer work, we're not paid staffers. ABAG and all these other organizations have enormous amounts of paid staffers, which obviously drive and alter policy into these local communities. And this is the front line of local communities. But, in your campaign kickoff in Sausalito, you thanked a number of people that participated in your campaign kickoff, and individuals and so on. And we were just so intrigued when we were on your website, we looked at this, and we noticed congressmen, congresswomen, senators, and so on and so forth. And we noticed that there are people from Mill Valley, there are people from Tiburon, there are people from San Rafael, and there are people from Marin City, and there are people from College of Marin, and there are people from Sausalito. There wasn't one person or one organization from this district.
I'm very disappointed that you did not attend my campaign.
I wasn't invited, nor I don't think any of these people.
All right. How many units? Next question. How many units at the seminary with the proposed housing project? Absolutely. How many units at the seminary would the proposed housing element allow, other than the current zoning land use entitlement?
Wait, can you repeat? I'm sorry, can you repeat it?
I'm going to repeat it again.
I wrote it.
Yeah, I know.
Here's what it said.
He gets to do it because he's my cousin.
How many more units would the proposed change to the housing element allow at the cemetery over and above what the current plan would permit?
That's a relative exception.
How many more?
They're asking how many more?
The units that are proposed for the housing element there would be no additional units proposed. They would be proposed to be clustered at 30 units an acre, but there is no additional units than what is currently allowed under the zoning on Golden Gate Seminary.
And I think the issues with the housing element is one thing, and then there's also amendments to the countywide plan, and that's where we're talking about the zoning. And from what I read in that document, the entire 73 acres of the seminary property is being rezoned for 1 to 4 residential units per acre. That's massive rezoning. That's not what's in the county plan. It's not getting rezoned at all. 0 part of the seminary property is being rezoned.
The only portion that is proposed for rezoning is to allow the current units at 30 units an acre. The
So it's rezoning for 30 units per acre?
It's allowing there's 93 units left in the under the master plan. And the housing element proposal, which will go in front of the Board of Supervisors on September 10th, is to allow those units to be clustered at up to 30 units an acre on 2 acres of that site. The rest, if whatever development potential was left, would be downzoned to reflect that. There would be no additional units other than what's currently allowed.
You know, and I think that this raises great points that people have questions about the housing element and the countywide plan amendments and all of the zoning things that are happening, which are very detailed and cumbersome. The supervisors, I believe, are reviewing or voting on this September 10th. We would love to invite you all back for another meeting so that we can talk about the housing element and the countywide plans. This meeting here today was talking about the PDA because that is a very big issue that we're concerned about right now, but we're also concerned about those things, but we would really need the same amount of time to go through those because there's a lot of detail and there is a lot of impact in those. Again, that is a different issue.
I think some of these questions are not bureaucratically aligned with the PDA. I think if it's Rotary, we can walk around the meeting. Simply, if this does not change much as suggested here, why was Marinwood and the other community, Tampa Valley, dropped from the PDA? Was it better political activity and voting record?
So I've told you why I supported dropping Tam Valley from the PDA, because it's in a floodplain and it already is suffering from climate change and sea level rise. The Marinwood decision, you'll need to ask Susan Adams about her reasoning on that.
But you voted to...
Yes, I'm sorry.
But you voted to remove Marinwood. I mean, it's, I guess, a 3 out of 5 person vote that's required, but you voted to remove Marinwood too.
And I felt that the supervisor in that area was best informed. Susan Adams has worked with that community for years, and I felt she was best informed about that community's needs and concerns.
Development of the seminary may or may not be subject to PDA standards.
Just one point.
Okay.
Just one point. And that is, we've read all the reasons why these communities want it out, or the justification for it. And all of the reasons, with one exception, that applied to those communities applied to Strawberry. And the thing that is really important is that the elevation in the McDonald's parking lot on the frontage road is 0 feet. And that interchange floods every high tide. So if flooding is the criteria by which you get out,
President has a question. Everybody in the world should be perfect. The answer is, don't you agree? Why hasn't Mill Valley or Tiburon annexed Strawberry in the past? What does it take for us to incorporate as a city? If we're a city, do we have more control of PDAs?
So I can't tell you why Tiburon and Mill Valley hasn't annexed Strawberry in the past. And that is certainly an analysis that any unincorporated community can do, whether annexation is appropriate or becoming your own city or town. That's an analysis that any unincorporated community can do, and it requires a deep dive and a serious financial examination, and you certainly can do that.
Well, I mean, I think that maybe, I don't know, I think our issue, it sounds to me like we have to annex or become our own town to get representation, and that's very disappointing.
If Strawberry is not, underline not, so the person has underlined not a PDA, and the seminary chooses to sell some land to developers, A, what zoning applies, B, what incentives are there for developers for dense housing and for low-income housing? Then please contrast this is a long question. Please contrast this if there is a PDA? What's the difference?
The PDA doesn't really affect either the existing master plan that, as the supervisor indicated, has the residual potential for 93 additional units, or any proposed amendment to that master plan or a new master plan, which would have to follow along the existing countywide plan, the community plan, and the zoning for that property. And it's zoned for, it's a residential multiple family plan zoning district, which means it requires a master plan, and it's a maximum density of around 2.5 units per acre.
Second part is, what zoning incentives are there for developers for dense housing?
Financial incentives.
There's a state density bonus law which has no connection with the PDA, but it's state law that allows certain incentives depending on if the project meets a certain list of criteria. But again, that has no bearing whether or not the site is within the PDA.
So it sounds like the PDA, again, what you're saying is that the PDA doesn't do anything. All the things that the Plan Bay area document says aren't true.
Question. Always have to end with a question. Your question is?
Is that right?
Tell us the truth. Now, Rob, you have not been to law school, but you've done it. Stacy, is it the truth? Is that correct?
Is it correct that your question is whether the PDA has any impact?
Well, I think that was the question, yeah.
The PDA's impact is to focus at what little growth that the county will have within existing communities, and it will provide incentives by offering transportation funds. I think that that's what the goals of the PDA were, that the county applied for it in 2007, and that's, those are the basic parameters of the PDA. I also think that it's careful, when we talk about the complexities of the Plan Bay area and the PDA are not synonymous. They are related, but they're not completely interchangeable.
Is it not true that the Strawberry Shopping Center can and will be up-zoned for 100 units?
Question, can the Strawberry Shopping Center be up-zoned for 100 units?
Under the countywide plan, it is one of our housing overlay designation sites for up to 100 units of housing. That's already the status quo from our existing countywide plan. But to qualify for that, there has to be a number of criteria that has to be met. It's a separate program from PDAs or mixed-use programs. But that's the existing countywide plan policy for that particular property since 2007.
I think, well, the Strawberry Village.
And I think the last time that
I
there
know,
were...
recognize that.
Well, I mean, I think when we start looking at that Strawberry site, we looked at one of the things we researched was, the list of sites to be evaluated for both the 2007 and 2014, or for the 2007 to 2014 and the 2014 to 2022 housing element planning periods, and there are 20.97 acres in Strawberry that are designated in this. There are hundreds of units that are in this county document of sites to be evaluated for the housing unit in Strawberry along the corridor, and that's not even counting anything that could happen with the seminary other than the 60 units that's on the housing element right now. I mean, again, that's why I'm saying we need to come back and talk about these details because they are big and they're going to be voted on by the Board of Supervisors on September 10th. So we would invite you back to this, to come back next week or soon thereafter so we can talk about these things because these are big issues too.
So yeah, what I was going to say was the last time that there were revisions done at the Strawberry Shopping Center, there were 5 units of workforce housing added in there. I don't know how many people are aware of that because it's tucked into areas that you don't even notice. And yes, a number of sites in Strawberry, but also throughout the county, were examined as possible sites for inclusion in the housing element because they already were zoned multifamily, so there wouldn't be any requirement for zoning change. As I indicated earlier, only one property in Strawberry is included in this housing element for the current cycle, And because of the expected drop to 187 units in the next cycle, it's very unlikely, it's not anticipated that any other site in Strawberry will be needed for the second housing cycle.
Next
We
question.
can talk more about this.
Next question. Why are we so concerned with securing funds from the state for auto, bike, and pedestrian infrastructure improvements? Strawberry generates millions of sales tax dollars between property taxes, Strawberry Village, Porsche, McDonald's, In-N-Out, etc. It feels like this should be more than adequate to make Strawberry's public areas beautiful and accommodating for all users. It feels like these funds are mismanaged. Do you agree?
And I have stopped beating my wife. I certainly don't agree that funds are mismanaged, but I do think it would be helpful for us to get Roy Gibbons, who's our Department of Finance head, to come down and really give us all a detailed explanation of how the county uses funds collected from any of our unincorporated areas and all the different entities, our school districts and our other special zones that also use your tax dollars, so we can all have a firm understanding of where your money goes.
And I think we don't want explanations, we want accountability, and we don't want someone to come and go through and say, this is where it's going too bad. We're saying that we generate a lot of money, this is a big community, and we want to see it being spent here. We don't want to be sacrificed up to something that no one can really fully account for and explain, and in exchange for money that we should be getting anyway. I mean, it's a bigger issue.
We should invite the finance director to the meeting next week.
I didn't hear you.
I said we should invite the finance director to the meeting
Next time, you shall let me.
We have to have another meeting, there's too many cookies around.
Wait, not long. Next question. What are your projections for the population of Marin County in 2023 and 2033? What are the current projections for those dates? What are the equivalent projects for our water consumption for the same period, and the probability of meeting those requirements? So the question is, what are the populations growth projected in your belief, and what are the provisions being made for increased water supply to address those houses?
So I'm going to give you a very general response and then see if my colleagues have any more detailed information, which they may not. My understanding is the projected population growth for Marin County is 0.03%. And I've also heard, but this may be subject to confirmation, that MMWD is confident that it can handle projected water needs for that very minor growth in our population.
How many people would that work out to?
Obviously, I got to make, who can do math? Yeah.
Aren't there two projections of population for Marin County? I keep hearing the state has, ABAG has one, and the State Department has a final.
Oh yeah, they have a lot of projections, but that's where we get back to the local control issue where we began our conversation much earlier. The thing that's important about that language that I read you that was adopted on July 8th in Plan Bay area, that underlines our local control and affirms what was our county planner's intention all along, which was to not change our zoning and our planning processes to meet any expectation of population or job growth that ABAG might come up with. Over the last 2 years, as I indicated, the county has been in a lot of close contact with ABAG and MTC and sent letters, which you can find on the website of our planning, our CDA website. You'll see copies of those letters where we criticized and we pointed out problems with the projections of Plan Bay area. We are not adopting any of those projections in any way, and our planning is not being informed by them. We're trying to plan for what people in our communities actually need based on a very, very small expected growth rate.
So I'm a little confused. So what we're talking about is almost no